On the colorless here, we got, there aren't that many colorless cards, so this shouldn't take too long. We have Evolving Wilds, which is a reprint. Search your library for basic land card, put on the battlefield tapped. I would play this even in a 2-color deck. I think you should, but I think this format's always 2 colors plus splashing your best 2 cards of another color, so you should always be playing this. Great Axe, equip creature gets plus 4, equip 5. This seems like filler. I don't even want to play this. Unless you have something that like bypasses equip cost, which I guess I don't know how many of them there are. I didn't really see any. I don't think you should be playing that card ever. Leather Armor. Equipped creature gets plus 1 and has ward 1. Equip 0, activate only once each turn. It's kind of interesting. I think it's a little bit too weak. It is interesting though. Don't think it's good enough. Mimic. Sacrifice Mimic, add 1 mana of any color. Oh, so it's literally just a treasure? That's kind of cool. Mimic becomes a shapeshifter, artifact creature, base power, and 3/3 until the turn. So, no. Man, I wish this card was better. No. No. Don't play this card. Spare Dagger. Quick creature gets plus 1/0, and whenever this creature attacks, you may sacrifice it. When you do, this creature deals 1 damage to any target. Equip 1. I like this card a lot. The reason why is the equipped creature is dealing the damage. Which means if your creature has Death Touch, this is just 2 cost terminate. 1/1 terminates. And there's lots of Death Touch creatures. A lot of black ones. And there's even some on-hit effects, right? There's the, there's like white. There's white, like, so if you life drain something, you'll get a 2/2 off it. Yeah, you're right, the green dragon. If you have the green dragon, then the Spare Dagger becomes a terminate. I think Spare Dagger, if you've got at least 2 ways to have Death Touch in your deck, you should probably be playing it. If you don't have any Death Touch cards, then don't play it. But this card is pretty good. It's just Death Touch related. If you're not playing black, it's unlikely you're playing this card. It can be a good sideboard card if your opponent has a bunch of these Hobgoblin Captains that you can't block down. So just kill those as well. Spiked Pit Trap. Flash. 1 cost Flash. 5 tap sacrifice. Choose target creature, then roll a d20. Deal 5, or deal 5 and get a token. So 45% chance of dealing 5, 55% chance of dealing... I guess it's 100% chance of dealing 5. With the 55% chance of getting a treasure. I think this card's good. I think you're almost always going to play it. Colorless removal. Also mana fixing, but you're always going to be splashing 2 cards of another color. It's instant speed, too. I think you're almost always going to play this card. It kills almost everything in the format. With upside. Yeah, everything is combat damage, sadly. In this format. I looked it up. Everything in this format is... This is a reprint. This is a reprint, a bag of holding. This card's like medium. If you're like a Mopey deck, this card's good. If you're not a Mopey deck, don't bother. I do like that it answers the question for you, where if you have 1 card in hand that you like, do you loot? The answer is yes. I think this card's fine. It's slow, but it is eventually, it's gonna like a 9 mana draw 3 eventually, right? You're gonna pay, I guess 11 mana draw 3. But you might be drawing 2 lands and a blank. So, I mean, this is just like a slow plotting card. If your deck has removal spells in it, a lot of removal spells, this card's like a bomb. Because it's instant speed, you can just like leave open, have shields up, have your counter spell open, have your instant speed removal spell open. If they don't do anything, then use Bag of Holding, so you're making ground every single round. Yeah, it's an uncommon this time instead of rare. It's in sealed. Sealed is typically a slower format, so I don't fault anybody for playing this card. Why is Spike Trip better than Eyes of the Beholder? It's colorless, and it costs 5, and it makes a treasure, so it might cost 4. Makes something. Big difference between 5 and 6 mana. Don't pretend you're some other people that I've talked to about Spike Trap and say that it costs 6 mana. It doesn't. Spike Trap costs closer to 4 than 6. Dungeon Map. 3 colorless, tap, add a colorless, 3 tap, venture. This card is great. You're always going to play this card. This card is fantastic. That's a really low cost to draw a card. Might even be a 9. Like this card can almost solo people. This actually is probably a 9. This card is phenomenal. Wow, yeah, this card's really good. Yeah, Magnifying Glass is always great in Seal. This is better than Magnifying Glass. Because Magnifying Glass was like 6 mana draw a card. Yeah, I know what you're not gonna mag. Yeah, this thing. Moves 4 tap investigate. And Magnifying Glass was good. And this is just way better. Oh. Yeah, this is actually a great 6-drop, you're totally right. 50 Feet of Rope. This is the I don't know what to think about this card. It's very different than Dungeon Map because Dungeon Map ramps you. And then when you're out of spells in your hand, you start venturing, right? This does not ramp you. And it costs 4 to activate to venture instead of 3. It's significantly worse than Dungeon Map. And the target creature doesn't untap during his next untap step. I don't know what to think about that one either. That's a lot. It's a lot to pay to like lock something down. I like that it has a backup plan, but I think it's a good sideboard card. I don't think it's embarrassing to play this card. I'll put it as a 5, but it is way worse than Dungeon Map. It does give you inevitability if your opponent's a Terminate deck. 4 cost, 5/3 Vigilance. Attacks or blocks each combat of Fable. I like this card. Juggernaut was always a card I enjoyed playing. So it's basically Juggernaut. It's a little bit, you might say it's a little bit worse because your opponent can like untap equipment and attack you and you have to block. But Juggernaut has historically been a card I almost always play. It forces your opponent to trade with it. It does trade with some 2-drops. I still think you're going to play with it. I don't think this card's worse than Juggernaut. Bad timing against 3 on first strike. You're right, it is really bad against that one. The Hobgoblin Captain. It is really bad against that. You board it out against that. But I don't think every deck's gonna have those. I think you're over like the thing is if your opponent has like a 3/3 and a 2/2 and a 1/1, they can't actually attack with a 2/2 and 1/1 if they want to trade with this because you can just block the 2/2 or the 1/1, right? So then it trades with a 3/3, which is whatever. Temple of the Dragon Queen enters the battlefield. You may reveal a dragon card from your hand. Temple of the Dragon card enters the battlefield tapped unless you reveal a dragon card. Okay, so... Oh, okay, so it's just like another Evolving Wilds. Because you come into play, choose a color. But it might come to play untapped. There's a lot of random dragons in this set. There's like, you know, Jaded Sellsword is just like a random dragon. You know, there's like the Wandering... There's the Wandering Troubadour in green. Yeah, this thing is just randomly a dragon. This card's really good. You're always going to play it. Always. Even in just 2... Yeah, Shimmer Drift available at upside. Yeah. Alright, let's get on to the rare. Let's continue with the rare colorless cards. We have these... there's a cycle of lands, which we'll go through here. Cards you're always going to play if you're on them. They're not great if you splash, because they require color mana to activate, but... Be careful. These are worded slightly differently. They need to be among your first 2 lands. I know there are some, like Seachrome Coast is an example of, like, cards like this they've made in the past that they can be one among your first... See, Seachrome Coast says, enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. Right? And this says... If you control 2 or more other lands, it comes in a battlefield tapped. So it's really confusing if you're a long-time player of the game, but these need to be your first 2 lands. It says other lands. It says other lands, so it comes into play untapped if it's among your first 2 lands. But you're always gonna play these cards, so to get down in the Bugbear, if you're on those colors, if you're not, don't bother. And then interesting to note on the red one is that if you activate it multiple times, then you actually get multiple goblins. So if you have 8 other lands, if you have 8 other mountains and Den of the Bugbear, you can activate it twice, and when you attack, you get 2 and 1 goblins when you attack. So interesting to note on that one. And there's also there's another random rare land, but we'll get to that later. This one is insane. This is like a 9. I don't know how you're supposed to beat this card in sealed. You're just not. You're just not. Is there even land destruction in the format? I don't think there is. Like a death touch creature is how you can kill this. Or if you have the -11/-11 if you have 9 mana. All right, there's just I don't. This thing is way too hard to kill. It's a bomb. Same thing here as the red one, where same thing as the red one where if you activate this multiple times, you can exile multiple cards from their graveyard, although I don't know why you would want to do that. There aren't that many cards that care, so. Do you think Cave of the Frost Dragon's a 9? It could be. It's not nearly as good as Hall. You'd think Hall of Storm Giants is a 10? I mean, it might be. This might be a 10. I really don't know how you're supposed to kill this. Oh, you're supposed to win if your opponent has it. But on the plus side, like, the dungeons make 1/1 trump blockers. So maybe they're just not incentivized to, like, pay 7 mana to kill a 1/1, and then maybe that's how you beat it. It seems hard. Would you play Hall and an island? Yeah. If I was splashing blue, absolutely. Hall of Storm Giants? Yeah, absolutely I would. I would splash for this one. I'd probably, maybe I splash for, I guess I wouldn't, I don't know if I'd splash for the red one. Maybe I do. Kind of mopey. Maybe I splash for all of them. You might. It might be reasonable. Depends how good your mana is. And then there's this Hydra. I like that they templated it so X can't be 0, so you can't just accidentally kill yourself when you're tapping it for mana, so that's nice. I don't know how good this one is, though. Because you have to, I know it says X in green, but it's actually like X green, right? Because it needs to be untapped at the end, otherwise it's useless to you. Unless you're trying to punch something with it. But I'm not sure it's better than the red one, I think. But I don't know if it's better than the black one. You're gonna play them all. Alright, so there's some other ones, like this is just a... Enters a battlefield tapped to add a colorless, 4 mana tap it on tap legendary, venture into the dungeon. No thank you. I don't even know what the situation would be that you'd be playing this card in your deck. But I don't know, like I guess I didn't check how many legends there are. Like maybe if there's some cheap, if you have like 5 legends in your deck, or maybe if you have 3 legends in your deck, maybe you play this card. I don't know how you're gonna have 3 legends in your deck. But legendary creatures too, not just legends. And then there's Treasure Vault. No thank you, don't play this card. I don't even know what would be required for you to play this card. I guess you play this card actually if you have... No, wait a minute. The Rust Monster. There's not an X spell in the format, not a Fireball anyway. But there is Rust Monster, and there is Tarask. Maybe if you have Tarask or Rust Monster, if you're like a green-red deck with those two, you play Treasure Vault, so maybe I'll put it as a 2. Like in a Met, yeah. Because if you have 6 other lands and Treasure Vault, you can sack Treasure Vault to produce 3 treasure tokens, untap, play Tarask, right? So... Oh, Tomb of Annihilation makes a legendary creature? That's a good point. That's a good point. But why are you tapping your 4/4 Death Touch to venture into the dungeon instead of killing them? That's my question. Alright. Hand of Vecna. When there's a battlefield, draw a card, lose 2 life. Sure. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. This card seems great. 2 life is a real cost? Yeah, absolutely it is. It is a pretty... This is absolutely a great card. But this is a 4 mana draw 2, right? 4 mana draw 2, lose 4. I feel like that's a baseline, and that like that's a price I'm probably willing to play a vast majority of the time. I think beyond that is kind of aggressive, but I'm willing to pay the first 4 life for that. I think it's good. I think it's just... I'll put it as an 8. Yeah, your opponent is incentivized to go into the Tomb of Annihilation if you do this, so maybe you might have to discard some of the cards, but... it is an interesting point that if your opponent goes into Tomb of Annihilation when you have Eye of Vecna, just be aware that for Veils of Fear, you might just have to discard a card so you don't get burned out. Hand of Vecna. At the beginning of combat on your turn, a quick creature gets, or a creature you control named Vecna gets +X/+X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. Equip, pay 1 life for each card in your hand, equip 2. So it's like Imperial Armor, which was like almost a 10 out of 10. It was almost a 10 out of 10 in its format. It was a 2-cost artifact. Imperial Plate. Imperial Plate was almost a 10 out of 10. Yeah, and obviously if you have the combo of Steadfast Paladin into Hand of Vecna, it's just game over, right? Because you just get it all back. Yeah. It doesn't do anything on defense, you're right. I still think it's quite good. I actually like it somewhat better because you don't get owned if you move the equipment around, and you don't get owned if you like play cards post combat. So I actually think it's a better templated card than Imperial Plate. For instance, like if you equip a 1/1 and you attack and you have 4 cards in hand, so it's a 5/5, your opponent blocks with like a 4/4. If you play like a land post combat, your creature's dead. Whereas with this, that is not the case. Because the number that it gets buffed by is set once the trigger resolves, and it doesn't change over the course of the turn. Yeah. Likely this is at least +1/+1, because you like untap, upkeep, draw a card, and then main phase 1, you just don't play it, right? And then you go to combat. You can sack Durant's monster after the buff, yeah. This card's quite good, it's a 9. Very, very good. Treasure chest. 3 mana to play, 4 to sacrifice, roll a d20. On a 1, you lose 3 life. Oof. 2 to 9, create 5 treasure tokens. Yikes. Don't want to do that. 10 to 19, gain 3 life and draw 3 cards. Now that's what I want to do. 7 mana, draw 3, gain 3. I'll buy that. But then 20, search your library for a card. If it's an artifact card, you may put it on the battlefield. So the 20 is actually worse than the 10 to 19, which is kind of weird. This is the second card in the set that does that. Sorry, let me scroll down a little bit. So the sweet spot is 10 to 19. I don't think you want to play this. I mean, if you want to have fun, do it. But if you have an advantage, maybe it's fine. If you have one of the Barbarian class, or if you have the Pixie in your deck. The Pixie Guide. Maybe. Search your library for a card. If it's an artifact card, you may put it onto the battlefield. Yeah, you don't reveal it. If it's on the battlefield, you don't know whether it's an artifact or not. It's either Demonic Tutor or Tinker, right? I mean, you can, in theory, search for an artifact and just not put it into play if you want, but... Yeah. Demonic Tutor is actually worse than drawing 3 and gaining 3, so it's so weird that the 20 is actually not what you want. Weird. I don't think you want to play this, I bet. I don't... It maybe is a blue-red card, maybe. Because if you can use treasures for something too, maybe. I don't think you want to try it. Alright, deck of many things. So, 5 to play, 2 to activate, roll a d20, subtract the number of cards in your hand. If the result is 0 or less, discard your hand. Now, it's something to keep in mind. Yeah, you're right, it's not deck of many things, it is the deck of many things. Something to keep in mind when you're looking at this is that the roll is actually independent of the actual effect. Like, if I were to roll a 10 with 3 cards in hand, I would still draw 2 cards. So that's independent. It basically only matters if you have like 4 more cards in your hand and you activate this. You might discard your hand in addition to the output. So this card is actually way better than it looks, because you're not owned. You're not cut off from the output. As far as I understand, From reading the card, that is what it looks like. Remember to look at the release notes to make sure that's the case. But the critical miss on this, even if you discard your hand, you still return a card at random after you discard your hand. Because you do that first. You do it in your order of the card. I would assume. So. But something to keep in mind on the 20 part is put a creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So if you put your creature into play under your control, you will die when that creature dies. However, if you animate your opponent's like 3/1 from their graveyard, when that 3/1 dies, they lose the game. I don't see why it would be sketch. Why would it be sketch? Yeah, the deck of many things is like a 10. It can just solo win the game, right? Why would your opponent not have a creature in their graveyard? I don't understand. You're talking about this magical scenario where you've played deck of many things and you're activating it, and somehow your opponent has no cards in their graveyard, no creatures in their graveyard, and you roll a natural 20. That doesn't sound like reality to me. Remember to look at the FAQ for this. But from my reading of the card, that is the case, but maybe not. No, maybe not. No, actually, now that I read it again, that is probably not how it works. That is not how it works. It can't be, right? Yeah, I'm not convinced anymore, now that I've read it some more. This disagrees with me? Yeah, you're right. The FAQ hasn't come out for it. I'm going to reevaluate myself here. Alright, so let's go over this again. I was wrong. Now that I've read it again and again, it's wrong. Okay. So, deck of many things. 5. 5 to play. 2 to activate. Roll a d20, subtract the number of cards in your hand. If the result is 0 or less, discard your hand. And then, with your result, go to this list. Okay, so they didn't put 0 or less on there in the same format as the others, which I think they could have to make it less confusing. But, so, I activate this. I activate this. I have 3 cards in my hand. I roll a 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. So, I return a card at random from my graveyard to my hand. So, the only way for you to get a 20 is if you're empty-handed. Which makes more sense. And if you draw more cards, then if you activate the deck of many things some more, then you're going to get a lower value. So you're just going to draw basically 1 card instead of 2. This card, but if it hits 0 or less, you might discard your hand. That is true. So there's a risk involved. There's a risk involved, for sure. Yeah, I was confused when I read it. Not anymore. This card does seem fun. There's an element of risk attached to every activation, because you might, instead of like gaining an advantage, you might actually just shoot yourself in the foot and discard your hand. But I think you're always going to play this, and it might single-handedly win the game. It seems like at least a 9. Just a card advantage. It's like a JMD Tome, right? Maybe it's an 8. It's either an 8 or a 9. It might be a 10, actually. Nah, it's too slow for it to be a 10. It's too slow for it to be a 10. It is good, though. Yeah, it's not a 10. But that's colorless. Dungeon map is wow. This is a powerful uncommon. And this might be one of the best cards to open in the format. Just because it's colorless, so you're always going to play it. And there's tons of really awesome 5-drops in the format. Yeah. Dungeon map might actually be one of the best cards in the format to open, period. Like, it's not going to be the highest win rate card, and it's not going to be the best card in your deck. But when you're like looking at your opening 84 cards, you're like, you're just like flipping through your cards and like, okay, oh, dungeon map, man, my card, I'm going to have a 9 out of 10 card in my deck no matter what. This is going to be great. Yeah, it's going to have just an amazing, it's just going to be in all your decks. Yeah, map is absurd. I don't doubt it. And I like the Temple of the Dragon Queen. I like that there's they're basically 2 Evolving Wilds in the format, which is cool. And this one's gonna come in and play tapped at like a quarter, maybe even more of the time, or kind of play untapped, I should say. This is cool. I like this card a lot.